Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Woodstock, Georgia, it's time for Cherokee Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
Welcome back to another great episode of Cherokee Business Radio. I'm Joshua Kornitsky. I am a professional EOS implementer and your host this morning. And today in the studio, I have two fantastic guests. Let me start by introducing Alicia Todisco of Ace Handyman Services. She is the owner of Ace Handyman Services. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a wonder to have you here. I really appreciate it. So, Alicia, I'm so happy to have you in the studio because I have so many questions, but I want to start by explaining how involved in the community you are. And the way that I met you was through the Ackworth Business Association, but I also know that you now sit on the board of the Ackworth Business Association. You sit on the board of the Kennesaw Business Association, where I was this morning, and that you're now on the board of the North Cobb Rotary as well.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, president-elect for the Ackworth Business Association, so I'll take the reins next year.
That is a pretty impressive accomplishment, but not as impressive as how you yourself spend your time, because I understand you're one of the only female franchisees of Ace Handyman?
Yeah, there are me and maybe one or two others. The other ladies partner with a father or brother, husband, so it's really an interesting place to be in my world.
Well, and did you say you've started a women's group?
Within the ladies of Ace, yep.
That's really great. And there was even an article about you recently.
So it was actually a couple of years ago, but they did an article that is called Resiliency. It's just a women in franchising, blazing the path article. So
well, and in the field that you have established yourself in, I'm sure, as you just indicated, right, there's not an abundance of women operating in that space. So you really are a trailblazer. That's really, really great. What got you here? What did you do before you decided to become the first female franchisee, or at least one of the only female franchisees of Ace Handyman?
Get me in trouble by calling me the first.
I'm sorry, one of them.
One of the only, yeah. So my background is in sales. Okay. I owned a couple of small businesses in my 20s, but then I went into corporate America selling payroll and HR technology through a company called Paychex.
Okay, I know that name.
Yep, most people would. But then I started working for a company out of Louisiana called NetChex. Okay. And I spent 7 years there in sales leadership. Sales management, national or regional management. And then I took over the director of learning and development for them. And spent about 3 years developing their sales program.
Wow. So you're a process-driven person.
Very process-driven, Mr. EOS.
Thank you. So all of that sales experience and then learning and development on top of that, how did that prepare you for where you find yourself now? Do you spend a lot of time having to educate your prospective clients?
My prospective clients deal mostly with our office team.
Okay.
I am more community focused. So we're brand building, brand awareness, driving sales. And so it's 100%, 90% of what I do every day is sales.
Okay. So let's talk about what you do. What type of services do you provide?
So my company is Ace Handyman Services. We provide services for both residential and commercial. We say we do 1,162 different things in the home.
That's it?
Yeah, that's all.
Okay. Well, so let's, I'd like to ask, let's put commercial to the side because I want to come back to it.
Sure.
Let's talk about the residential side so people know what you can do to help them around the house.
Yep. So it just depends on their need, really. I always encourage, if they're curious what a handyman does, to call us. So we can do everything from installing a door, closing in a room, building a wall. We've done that for one of our fellow networkers in the associations you discussed.
Wonderful.
To something as simple as hanging pictures on the wall. If you could see this beautiful wall in the studio with command strips. It doesn't really matter. It's where the need is and what provides value to our clients.
So you're really able to sort of customize the offering to fit whatever it is they're after.
A beautiful, long honey to-do list is one of the guys' favorites. Yep.
Wonderful. I think I told you this before. I just need somebody to live at my house because I don't know how to do any of this stuff. So what's a good rule of thumb? When should somebody call you let's stick to the residential side, then we'll get to the commercial side.
Sure. So I've had people sit on a honey to-do list thinking that it was going to take forever. And then we go in and knock it out in 2 hours because of the skill set of the guys, right? They're used to doing this every day. They're in and out of the hardware stores a lot faster. So when someone's thinking about a project, just call and ask questions. My team is very, they're sales oriented, right? Because of what I do.
Right.
So they're happy to consult and really dig in and ask a lot of questions that will help the customer self-actualize. Maybe I can do this piece of it myself, and maybe I really do need to get to this. A lot of times when people sit on a project for too long, the damage that's done gets worse. Let's say you have a leak in a gutter and it's dripping on a door.
Right.
Well, instead of replacing the bottom of the door, now you have to replace the entire door. So if we can help to protect and preserve the home, it'll help to prevent issues in the future.
So you're telling me my longstanding practice of turning up the radio so I don't hear the noise in the car is not the way to do things.
Correct.
I know I'm talking about a car versus a house, but I can turn the TV up real loud too so I don't hear the dripping.
Both assets, yes.
So what you're saying is that's not a good strategy.
Not the best.
But in that circumstance, so ACE itself always had this helpful persona, right? So let's talk about the types of people that you bring on board to execute on the services that you provide. Are they just anybody who knows how to swing a hammer?
It's funny. We say we bring helpful into the home, right? So we've taken that helpful hardware folks and we do bring it to the home. And it starts with the ladies in the office. So that is a specific skill set that we hire for. They have to be patient. They have to be kind. They have to also be able to remain in control because if someone's calling the office, they don't know what they don't know. So for us to offer a lot of education is really important. As far as the craftsmen are concerned, the number one thing I hire for is humble and kind.
Nice.
Within our industry, there are a lot of peacocks.
Okay, that's an excellent description of someone who perhaps wears their perceived accomplishments out front.
Yeah,
right. Doesn't mean they have those accomplishments, but they think they do.
Yeah. So I'm not a skilled handy professional myself. I really rely on them to be good at what they do. And so they have to be humble enough to, talk in layman's terms to me and to the ladies in the office, which translates to how we're speaking to our customers. We're speaking to them in a language that they understand. We're not talking over their heads. We are very cautious not to belittle them. So humble and kind is really important. What I'll tell you is over the years, the craftsman quality has gone up because we've learned what we've learned.
Right.
And that becomes really important. So it becomes kind of hard to hire.
Well, I gather that it becomes kind of hard to hire because you're hiring at a higher standard based on what you've come to expect from your craftspeople, your tradespeople when they're executing on your behalf.
Precisely.
So holding people to a higher standard so that the higher quality output, that's a positive. That's not a negative. If it makes it a little harder to hire, I understand, but I also suspect that you get a much better hire when you do find someone.
And that leads to a higher retention in our clients. They come back.
So do you have a fair repeat rate with your clients?
Yeah, we hover around 35%. We're pushing for a goal of 50%. But 35% of our customers come back on a regular basis, whether that's monthly, whether that is quarterly, whether that's annually.
That's great because that's truthfully that's the Google reviews are great, online reviews are great, but repeat business tells you how much they find value in what they're getting and what they're paying for. Do you get a lot of referrals from your customers?
We do. And one of the biggest compliments is when a parent has an experience with us and they bring us into their children's homes.
Wow.
They know that they're going to be able to offer an experience that's protecting them, that they're safe. They feel confident with the guys that we're sending in. On the other side of that, they send us into their parents' homes.
Sure.
So for the same reason.
I can understand that because those are, we've all heard horrible stories of people, let's just say, making bad decisions about who they hire and it costing them a lot more than just a few bucks. So that's great to know so that you're a resource for that. Let me now ask, tell me about the commercial side of your business. What type of services do those skilled craftspeople bring to the businesses you work with?
So sitting in a meeting with Ace a couple months ago, and I guess I hadn't thought about it through this lens, but it is really valuable to know that if you are a business owner and you have a ladder in the back, your insurance may not cover your employees getting on that ladder. So if something happens with them doing that, it's really more of a liability to them
Okay.
than the cost would be to hire someone to come in and do simple things around the office. So we do things like, change light bulbs, change HVAC filters that are in high, awkward spaces. We just did one at Vino Market in downtown Ackworth, for example, that was kind of cumbersome to get to. But Toby would rather hire us to do that versus sending one of his people up into the attic space in the
Sure,
rafters, right?
and that makes sense. And when you engage on the commercial side, I imagine in addition to simply paid service, like I need light bulbs put in at a high ceiling, do you also offer agreements?
We do. We do. We have a membership program for both residential and commercial.
Oh, wow.
And so let's say that a client has multiple locations and they want regular maintenance, those simple things that keep them in compliance, the light bulbs, the air filters. But maybe they also have some projects. They need to paint a bathroom door. They need to rearrange a couple of offices, paint an office space, hang a couple of whiteboards. You name it, simple tasks that we can do for them.
Right.
They can hire us for a bundle of hours that will offer them a concession. And that concession we do throughout the course of the year. If for whatever reason they don't use those bundled hours throughout the year, we can allocate those. They can share those as incentives for their employees where we can do projects in their homes.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
We can do it in combination with one of our give back programs. Like if we go into the VFW or if we go into a battered women's shelter, they can donate those hours.
Wow.
In which case we would then give them the write-off, obviously. But they can allocate those however they choose if they don't use them all for the business.
That's a really compelling offer and a really kind thing that you as a business owner are offering to your clients. So that's an aspect of your business I was less aware of. So is that something that you're continuing to grow and get out there? And when people want to learn about either side of this, on the commercial or the residential side, two different phone numbers or all one thing?
It's all the same phone number. So the office manages both commercial and residential. So they would call our main line. Do you want me to share that now?
I'm going to come back to it, but yes, let's go ahead and share it because we're talking about it. So what's that number?
The office line is 770-627-7770. We have an amazing office team that can troubleshoot either. So that we can take care of our clients on either side, residential or commercial.
Awesome. So we'll come back again to how people can best reach to you in just a minute. But there's one other thing on my list that I was looking through that we had talked about before that I really want to ask you about. And well, really two things. You were talking about the skill of the craftspeople that you're bringing on board, and when it comes to that, how important is that as you kind of look to the future? How do you ensure that you'll have those tomorrow and next year and the year after?
So the skill of the craftsman, I always say I'm as good as my craftsman. So oftentimes people will come up and say, can you do fill in the blank?
Right.
Can you do tile work is probably a good one because tile is very specific. It's very tedious. Historically, we've said no.
Right.
Partially because we're hourly, and that would become very expensive for them to take on with an hourly model. But tile's gone up. If you call a tile professional, it's just as expensive as an hourly model would be for whatever reason.
Right.
So we've started taking on tile jobs. And as long as I have a craftsman who is skilled to do that, we can take on those jobs. Sometimes we have got a new guy starting today that I'm very excited about. We understand his skill set from his history. So he'll do some projects at my house. He'll do some projects by my field supervisor's side.
Okay.
So we really get a chance to inspect what he's good at. We do talk a lot about transparency, communication, integrity, and teamwork are our three core values. So if a guy can't do something, we highly encourage him to be very, very transparent with us about it.
I'm only laughing because I've been that guy, not working for you, where I thought I could do something that I didn't know how. And it turns out that fixing it after the fact usually costs a lot more than if I had called somebody ahead of time.
So much more money. Yep.
So what advice would you give to somebody that was looking to get started in the trades now? What can they do to improve?
This is my favorite, and honestly, probably one of the hardest things that I had to find coming into this industry was I'm a very mentor-driven person.
Okay.
I've had some crazy, amazing people in my path. Very, very lucky. Probably more than most, right? That's just me being very
That's a blessing.
right. Silly about it, but also really true. I had a really hard time finding a good mentor when it came to the trades industry. I come with a very different background of mindset. I'm not the technical side. I am way more into the business side.
Sure.
So we had some nice shared value there. But what I've done is I've had the opportunity to generate a lot of great people around me that are trades professionals. It was one of the first thing I did when I came into Ackworth Business Association at the Morning Jolt, in fact,
Right.
was I looked for other trades professionals who could do the things that I can't do, but operate with the same level of professionalism that I expect out of my team. So if I ever have to send a referral,
Right.
Jim calls and he needs a plumber, I know where I can send him, where he's going to get top-notch service as an extension of my business. And that, to me, is invaluable because we work very closely with other trades professionals. If a mover hits a wall, for example, and they need someone to come and fix that, they're going to call us. If an HVAC company steps through a ceiling, they're going to call us. We're going to fix it. We're responsive. We're on time. We're quick. We're offering that same level of professionalism. And if you are a trades professional that wants to do things differently, I really encourage that behavior.
So that's a really great point and a great tie back again to the commercial side of things, so that if you are someone already operating a business in the trades, if you're a plumber, if you're HVAC, if you're an electrician, no one wants these things to happen, but sometimes these things do happen. And rather than trying to scramble and spend the valuable time of a plumber, an electrician, or an HVAC technician, they can just call you and you can mitigate the issue.
Yeah, we can get them in touch with great people. It's worked on both sides. When we were brand new, we would step in it from time to time, and we would need someone to come in. So we have great general contractors that we can call on if we made mistakes, and thank God we haven't done that in a long time.
Well, that's how we all learn. But
and so it's cool for the tables to have turned, 3.5 years later, and we're that resource for other trades professionals now.
That's a wonderful thing. I am grateful to have a few clients in the trades, and I will make sure they know to call. Last question that I have is really related to what you shared with me ahead of time. One of your passions was we were talking, and you touched on something that's near and dear to my heart, because my wife was a collegiate soccer player. Pardon me. I almost said softball, and that'll cost me later, is all I'm going to say. My wife went to Florida State on a soccer scholarship, but you and I were talking about soccer.
Yes.
So share with me or with us what your passion is there. What is it about soccer, about kids?
It's kids. Yeah, for sure. I played soccer growing up in high school.
Okay.
And then I happen to have this little rock star soccer kid. He's 10. And a few years ago, he started to get involved on a soccer team. About a season in, his coach quit. And it was about the same time.
Whoever would fill in that slot.
Oh, who would it be? I stepped in as the assistant coach for a few seasons with some amazing other coaches. And,
Sure.
I was still traveling part-time with my last company. So it was a good way for me to get ingrained in the community without really having to transition yet. So I got to see, did I like the community? Is this a community I wanted to be a part of?
Sure.
But it's really interesting to me. I don't know that people talk to kids the way that I talk to kids. A lot do, right? I don't mean nobody
in a positive way, I hope.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know what? They deserve to be held accountable.
Sure.
They deserve to be treated like humans and not little breakable, fragile things. They really thrive in an environment where you're teaching them integrity and balance and rules and consequences. So between running club and between soccer, those are good platforms for me. And to watch them thrive is pretty incredible.
That's really awesome, and what an incredible way that you give back. So thank you for that. Speaking as a soccer dad and a soccer husband, it's it's really something. And the only thing I'll say on that, and it's not my interview, but the only thing I will say on that is they're not little adults; they're children.
Yeah.
and people who treat a child like a little adult, yes, you're correct discipline, yes, you're correct rule set, but you have to understand that this is a unique individual that's learning, and you can't treat them like they're a small 38-year-old individual. They don't have the skills and the knowledge, and I'm grateful that you're there helping them see that.
Thanks.
Well, Alicia Todisco, the owner of Ace Handyman Services, what's the best way for people to reach you again?
So our office can be reached. Multiple people see this. So the best way to do it is to call the office line or the office email, which comes to three of us.
Okay.
The line is 770-627-7770. And our email is Ackworth, like the city of Ackworth, at acehandymanservices.com.
That's awesome. Well, we will also have your phone number, your website, and all of your social links posted on the Cherokee Business Radio site when the interview goes live for download. We're live right now as well. But thank you so much for sharing your background and your story. And I've got one more guest here in the studio. If you don't mind hanging out, we'd sure love to have you here. I'd like to introduce someone who I'm very pleased to say I've known for a few years as well. And has made a great positive impact on me because he's such a giving guy. I'd like to introduce Jim Hilber, truly the champion of merchant payments and the president of Merchant Gladiator. Welcome, Jim. Good morning.
Good morning, Joshua. Pleasure to be here, Alicia. Great to hear you speak.
I'm just so happy to have you here in the studio with us. You and I met early on in my journey, kind of reaching out into the networking universe. And I think it's fair to say, with due respect to Alicia's board seats, that you are a very effective networker because I think you get the value of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you networking or not working, right?
Oh, nice. Nice. That sounds like something my dad would have said. So I understand, first and foremost, because this is a really unusual thing, that you're actually a certified payments professional, and that's a designation that not a lot of people have or know about. Tell us what that is.
Correct. I'm actually in the inaugural class of the Certified Payment Professionals, and it's something not a lot of merchants know about, and I think everybody should. When I first went for that certification, it was to really rise above the competition like we all want to do. But the truth of the matter is, I do believe in the ethics of the industry and doing things the right way, and it's a very loose industry. Believe it or not, payments for merchants are non-regulated. So I believed in it, and it didn't get the traction I thought it would globally or nationally, but ultimately it is something showing that I have worked a little harder than the average Joe to make the industry great.
Well, and you touched on the ethics of the industry, and I won't crack any jokes this way, simply to say that, ethics to me tie to core values, and core values are pretty much what an organization needs to run on in order to be who it says it is, not aspirationally, but in reality. So I think the fact that was what drew you to it speaks a lot to what your character is. But, how long have you been involved with this type of business, with payment processing and specifically with what you're doing now?
Probably my greatest achievement. Thank you for the question. I've been 30 years victorious in the payments arena.
Wow.
I came
undefeated.
from the days of
undefeated.
Well, I don't know about that. I think I've failed more times than most people have tried in a tough industry.
Yeah,
but
you got to fail to move forward. It's the only path.
Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan. But yeah, 30 years in, I came from the days of when there was a little thumb buster. If anybody knows what that
I remember
is,
that.
listeners, I went to a chamber event and I said, everybody close your eyes. And I made that sound with the old thumb, chung chung, and half the room knew what it was. The other kids in the room were like trying to YouTube it. What was that?
Yeah, but for that other half, if you played the Apple Pay sound, they all know that.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Excellent.
So 30 years in merchant payments, I guess you've probably seen a lot of change, because just looking back over it as a consumer and as a business owner myself, the landscape, just with my limited understanding, is completely different than it was 2 years ago versus now. What are some of the changes that you've seen over time that help give you perspective?
Oh, I absolutely love it. Previous to being a merchant payments professional, I managed grocery stores, Joshua. And if you may not remember this, but a lot of the listeners might relate to this, I was a manager and I got called to register 7. And I ran right up to that cash register. Are we on fire? Are we being robbed? No, sir. I have a credit card over $50.
Wow.
And I really had to take this card out of the customer's hand. I had to walk it to what they call called the lobby. The lobby's where we rented VHS tapes back in the day. And we called
It's like a square
number.
DVD, right?
Yeah, there we go. Square DVD. Exactly. I had a sticker on it that said, "Be kind, please rewind." Okay, that's a different hot topic.
Well, yeah, we'll have that as a totally different dialogue.
At any rate, I had to call a bank, Joshua, an 800 number, and I had to request authorization for a $51 card payment. And I had to recite the 16-digit card number over the phone. No, not a 773. I'm sorry, 732, starting again. And then they gave me a 6-digit authorization code. I had to look for a crayon, a pencil, write it on a piece of paper. That's the short version.
Right.
And I'll take it back to the cash register and I say, "Thank you, customer, for your $51 in grocery payments. Carry out register 4.
Right, but in those days, $51 probably filled your grocery cart too.
Yeah.
So
Very
there is
fair.
that.
Very fair.
But still, that's a really amazing piece of perspective, kind of looking back, and I imagine that helps inform what you do now to a large degree.
Fast forward to today, you're waving your watch over a Coke machine in the airport and something pops out. No.
So let's talk about specifically what is a merchant gladiator. Right? I love the term. He's got a great badge on all of his stuff in his shirt, and he has the coolest business card I've ever seen. It actually looks like a credit card.
Yeah.
I've tried the number on it. You can get Jim on the phone, but you can't buy anything.
Really the gladiator comes from, if you study the history of gladiators, they weren't all slaves. Many of them were servants. And I believe nothing really happens in this country to something gets bought and sold. And merchants are out there in the wind. It's a huge industry. You see those big logos, MasterCard, Visa, American Express, Discover. And, they need someone who can unravel the madness. But more importantly than that, not just getting the facts, it's about who's going to protect them, who's going to fight for them. And that's really where the premise of Merchant Gladiator started, is I am unraveling the madness for merchants and protecting them, along with the great taglines, armed with viable payment solutions, sworn to serve and protect local business, fighting for good in the merchant service arena. I've said that a couple times.
I think that's awesome, though, man. And because here's the other part of it, right? And I want to touch on this, but just based on the clients I've had the pleasure to interact with throughout my entire career, let's just say there's a lot of assumptions that are made with regards to any type of electronic payment, right?
Sure.
What are some of the misconceptions that you encounter when you meet somebody new? And I want to come back and specifically talk about protection, but let's talk about first, what are some of the things that everybody knows? And if everybody knows it, chances are it's probably not 100% accurate.
Yeah, you're right. There's always exceptions to every rule. There's a great photo album in my iPad here, and it shows what customers see when they go to pay.
Okay.
And if you went to go buy a donut or get your car fixed, isn't there a little sign written on the back of a piece of paper in Sharpie marker? No payments over this amount. The $3 surcharge for this. 5% surcharge fee. So, this is affecting things every single day from the consumer side. But keep in mind, being a merchant gladiator, I'm on the acquirer side. My job is to put myself in the side of the merchant, not the payer. But if you're going to be a good merchant like Alicia, I have the pleasure of having her as one of my clients. She knows more importantly what her customers think and do and how they operate is super important.
Sure.
So ultimately, it's those cues that we see that are misunderstood. Why did they charge 3%? Why did they charge $1? Why are they trying to add money on? Can they do that? Can they not do it? So again, it goes along those lines, Joshua, unraveling the madness of the cues we see every day when we buy something.
Okay. So what are some of the things that people get wrong on the merchant side? So let's talk about that, because that's who this show is a business to business show.
Yep.
And most of those that are listening are on the business owner or the business leadership side.
Beautiful.
What are some of the challenges that you often encounter that you've got to overcome?
Yeah. The two hottest topics, thank you for the question, is again, what I mentioned, that surcharging.
Right.
What percentage are they legally allowed to charge? Are they allowed to do it? And there's still cardholders saying, are they allowed to do this?
Right.
It's a difference of a guy saying, hey, remember the guy on the movies when your car breaks down in that little town and he's holding that big wrench?
Sure.
They say, well, how much is it going to cost? Well, how much you got?
Right. Right.
That's what it is. It's almost like they're holding your cup of coffees, hostage with this, surcharging amount. But the truth of the matter is it used to actually be, for lack of better terms, illegal to surcharge. And that's where people are confused. You should not be able to allow it. It was a cost of doing business.
You couldn't do a pass-through charge.
You could not do a pass-through. That's correct. And now you can, if you do it the right way. But the biggest challenge I see for merchants is they are in good faith trying to say, hey, I need to work on costs. I am choosing as a merchant to pass this through. Many have, but there's the right way to do it. And so Merchant Gladiator can help unravel that and make sure they're doing it in the word of compliance, which comes under the shield,
Sure.
the safety, doing it the correct way, but doing it in the way to benefit them. And what merchants have to understand is there's good vendors like myself out there that our job is to really focus on them being, which is not a dirty word. Are you ready for it? Profitable. Profit is not a dirty word for anybody.
You're speaking my language. I always joke with my clients is it doesn't say .org on your website. The last thing I want anybody to be is an accidental nonprofit. If you choose to be a nonprofit, that's your business and that's great. But they still have to, even in the instance of merchant processing, it's not like the banks are going to give them a pass on the execution charge or the processing charge just because they are a nonprofit, correct?
That's correct. Absolutely. It has to be paid for. And then just a quick recap on the other challenges, very common for both merchants and consumers. If I say Square on this podcast, everybody knows what Square is.
Sure.
And then, of course, I can be in a networking event with Alicia and I say, don't be Square, and do the little hand signal of making a square.
Yep.
But the truth of the matter is Square is a fine product. Nothing wrong with it. And it might fit some merchants. But once merchants compare truly apples to apples and understand what they're getting, the misconception to your point of your question is that they are just saying they're all pretty much the same. That's just not true. They're not the same. There's a lot of differences.
So you help your clients kind of sift through the differences and understand what's going to be advantageous for them?
Absolutely. Just give them the facts, because once the facts are clear, the decisions will jump at you.
So how often I am a merchant, I occasionally accept a credit card. It's not my preferred because of that same surcharge. And I don't always want to pass that along because I do think it can, in the circumstance, might give somebody a bad taste or a bad impression. That's case by case. So I'm not going to ask your opinion on that. But how often, should someone re-examine who is handling their merchant services? Because that's something I know when it's like an embedded payment system, they may have the right to change it, but it's just easier to leave the way it is.
Absolutely. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Or let me say it correctly. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right. No, you're right. That's a harmful statement for merchants. So as a blanket statement for the sake of our listeners today,
Sure.
Merchants should evaluate at least annually. And it's one of my qualifying questions when I'm networking or meeting with people or referral partners, is I have them ask it. Hey, I know this guy, Jim, but let's pocket that for a minute. Josh was talking to a great business owner. How often do you evaluate your merchant payments? And if they're being honest, they've never evaluated them.
Right. They signed up and whoever provided the equipment provided the processing and and that was that.
You're talking about every day, Joshua.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
annually
that's
is a good. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
and we found that, it's like when you work with someone versus an 800 number or a .com like Alicia. And as a matter of fact, Alicia, are you due for your evaluation? We need to probably do that.
Yes.
At any rate, truly you don't close deals, you open relationships. And when you say that on the front end, when you're selling the deal, hopefully you're available on the back end to do that as well and kind of put your money where your mouth is, or I guess your credit card where your mouth is.
Well, so all joking aside, you just mentioned to Alicia, do you actually help your clients do this annual review once they're working with you?
Absolutely. And it should be done because things change. Volume and average ticket are the two most important things. Volume and average ticket. So when I met Alicia in a little coffee shop in Ackworth, when we first met day one, do you think her volume has grown since then over her mass years of success in the last couple of years?
I suspect so.
So possibly maybe she needs to sharpen the pencil with her vendors a little bit. Again, she knows as well as I do, profit's not a dirty word for me as her vendor either.
Sure.
And so that's part of it. The valuations are super important, but you need a good viable option, not just somebody, what's your rate? What's your rate? That's the most dangerous statement that can be made. What's your rate? Because if you say, oh, I've got a good rate, the guy gave me 2%. If you look at that bill and drill it down, he could be paying 4.5% overall effective rate. Because what matters is not what your rate is. Every merchant that's listening will know this. How much money comes out of your bank account is what the important number is.
Right. Well, and it sounds like not maligning the processing providers, but it sounds like there's a lot more nuance to it than just the rate.
Absolutely.
So that's why you've got to have a gladiator in your corner.
You got to say gladiator.
Gladiator. So one of the other things that we chatted about ahead of time, because I was curious to know, is you had shared with me a concept that resonated with me. You talked a little bit about something called the 12-week year. And I wanted to ask you about that because that aligns a lot with what I work with my clients on, talking about a 90-day world. Almost the same, but not. So can you share that with us? Because I think that's a really insightful thing that you brought to my attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. The 12-week year is a book by Brian Moran. That whole concept could be an entire another podcast.
Well, and so I'm
Yeah.
going to stick a pin in you. We'll come back and talk about that.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing, but the 12-week year is based on the premise of, I think, from the insurance companies. Remember how like these insurance guys were always bonused for annual, production,
Right.
and they always made their bonus, and they were most busy. And if you look at their flash reports for the year, December, they crushed it, and they crushed it. It was an annual bonus. It was available January 1st, but they don't make their bonus till December. So
Okay.
what happens is they're all just kind of waiting, things are going good. I'll get there next month. Oh, I'll make it up, stacking your goals, right?
So we used to call that sandbag.
And then all of a sudden, magically, they have a great year. So I think the pressure that puts on salespeople, especially when you're trying to stack goals, which you should never do, you should recalibrate, I think is monumental. And I've, again, failed more times than people have tried in sales. And so ultimately, I think that when I was reading Brian's book, it spoke to me. It's like, why don't we break this down in a way that if you put your entire year into 12 weeks, and it's not 90 days and it's not quarterly.
I understand.
That's a different concept.
I was simply drawing a broad comparison.
No,
Go
you
forward.
got it. It's really just, setting those goals to be in 12 weeks. And guess what? The fast forwarding to the end result, if you have a bad year, that's pretty detrimental for any business.
Absolutely.
But if you have a bad 12 weeks, do you think you could bounce it back and save the true calendar year? 1,000%. And
I would
more
think so.
importantly, if you have a great year or 12 weeks, do you think that's time to put the hammer down and make it even better? So, it helps minimize the challenges of the industry, but it helps capitalize on the actual strength of it. And ultimately, like I said, it's celebratory. You get 12 weeks and you're doing the happy dance or
Sure.
saying, okay, I got to bear down and what mistakes did I make?
So is this how you run Merchant Gladiator?
Absolutely. I've been doing it for the past 5 years, and it's really helped me grow in a way that's very systematic, because Alicia, I know, is very much of a process person. By nature, I am not. I'm like, I'm the president of Merchant Gladiator, and the guy runs a pretty loose ship. Okay? I mean, I'm a field player, and I'm in a tough industry that needs to have, decimal points in the right position.
Sure.
But ultimately, that process allows me to be intentional with how I use my time. And if you open my iPad right now, the first thing on the screensaver says, script your day. So every day,
Okay.
because in the 12-week year, to finalize that thought, in a 12-week year, a week becomes a day, a month becomes a week, and a year becomes 12 weeks. So it's really scaling things down and just helps you just succeed in a faster way.
Okay. Well, and obviously it benefits and trickles through to your clients because you're helping keep them ahead of things that could potentially impact them.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that with us, Jim. That's just great. Anything that enhances the business relationship between you and your clients and helps your clients get a better view down the road, that ability to predict is everything, right? Nobody knows for sure what's around the corner. But if we make educated predictions, we have a tendency to do a lot better than just randomly guessing and hoping we come around the corner to a bridge and not a gap in between the mountains.
Absolutely. I mean, I always say, what's a man, but I say, what's a business without energy? Nothing at all. So that's where the motivation and all that type of stuff comes in. Gladiator motivator sounds great,
Right.
But I learned a
Well,
very
Gladiator,
sad
if
fact.
there was if there was a gladiator behind me, I'd be pretty motivated, I think. But
That's awesome. But I learned a sad fact. I'll be honest. I learned that you can't motivate anybody; you must inspire them. But Gladiator inspire just doesn't click. So I'm going to stick to Gladiator motivator at
all
this
right.
point.
So my last question for you before I ask how people can get a hold of you is you had said this earlier on, and I just want to ask about it. You had said that you don't close deals, you open relationships.
Absolutely.
Tell me what you mean by that.
I see a lot of salespeople, and I've been one for my entire 30-year sales career. And most of the things once that app gets signed, I guess it's now digitally. I used to literally get them signed on paper and FedEx them at the airport.
And then you rode the dinosaur to the delivery.
Exactly. Somebody tried to send me a fax. I said, I can't get a fax. He goes, oh, where are you at? The 21st century. I think relationships are everything. Not only is it good for business, it's really good for our spirit and our heart. The energy that's created in a room with Alicia and I, seeing her run a meeting or be a participant in a meeting is absolutely contagious. Joshua, I saw you operating in Northwest Georgia and just taking names, and I loved your style. I loved it, and that's one of the reasons I'm here today. So yeah, let's talk about relationships more than just deals.
That's fantastic. Well, Jim, what's the best way for people to reach you? And it sounds like, if I'm going to ask this question, but I'm asking Alicia as well, it sounds like both of you are willing to answer questions from people that are just curious.
Absolutely.
Is that a fair?
Absolutely.
Okay. So Jim, how do people reach you if they have a question?
Yeah. I always say, everybody in the industry has a help desk, and
Right.
I'll be honest, all help desks suck, and we hope ours sucks the least. But let me tell you something. I like to talk to people, and I give every client, every prospect, and every person out there my direct number. It is 770-883-2080. And a lot of listeners like to text. I'm happy to take one of those as well. But yeah, reach out to me, or Jim@merchantgladiator.com.
Wonderful. And as I mentioned before with Alicia, we will have your contact information, your phone number, your website, any social links. All of that will be on the Cherokee Business Radio website as soon as we get everything posted and live. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here, Jim. The champion of merchant payments, the president of Merchant Gladiator, Alicia Todisco, the owner of Ace Handyman Services. I felt like I needed to give it more emphasis.
A little oomph there.
Little
yeah.
oomph. Yeah, I like the Gladiator. No, that doesn't work. I thank you both for coming in. It was a wonderful dynamic between the two of you. I think you both are focused on helping the people that just are brave enough to ask for the help. And that's the last thing. I thank you for being here. I appreciate your time and your energy. This has been another wonderful episode of Cherokee Business Radio. I'm your host, Joshua Kornitsky, professional EOS implementer. We'll see you next time.